we've dug out the shaper and main casting, cleaned off these surfaces. I just give them a coat of oil earlier, so I've moved all that off. We've cleaned off the masking tape on the ways. What I'm trying to show, you can faintly see the pattern of a flaking or scraping that was on there, more so in that section where there's been less corrosion. And it looks pretty even all the way down. I can't feel any ridges or anything, so the only real way of checking for wear is to try and spot print it vertically, which you can't do without my reference surface. They're a bit snotty with I don't know whether you can see the porosity of the casting, but also the paint that's actually gone in from an earlier paint job, which would suggest it's been pitted with rust and then they've painted it. You see the flaking marks there. At least I'm assuming that's what they are. Interestingly, if I go along the inside edge of that, get it in focus, you can see the, can you see them? There's like a very, probably a quarter of an inch from the back intersection forward, there are a series of scrape marks, or scratch marks I would say. You see those? I can't get at them with my finger because it's, my finger's too podgy. I can just feel the tips of them and they're quite deep. That might be the scraping marks, or somebody's had a go at it. I can barely feel that intersection. I've got to somehow try and get a measurement over that, just to see, because that surface should be the original machine surface. Obviously that's the wear pattern from the ram sliding up and down, so if I can check there just across that interface, it should give me an indication of what level of wear that is down below there. There's obviously there's nothing to check off that other than from that machine surface down, so I've got to come up with some kind of cunning plan to measure it. I've got a machine surface there and another one there which I should be able to span across, and then use a DTI going straight down, measure it there, run it across and measure it there. I'm looking for, I want to get it down, be able to resolve down to half a thou, so 5/10. So I don't know, it's about a 10-inch span. So I think that's a little bit too big for my parallels, but I'm going to give them a go and see what I find. And then of course once I've measured that, so I can determine the degree of wear here, I've then got to come up with something off this face to measure the 90 degrees to that face. And it's not just simply a case of dropping a square against it, because that edge protrudes probably ½ an inch forward. Bugger. So I'll probably put my parallel on there and then my 90 against it and drop down onto there, and the same on there. Yeah. Bring you back when I've got some results. Right, so that's the setup for measuring. I've got a steel parallel sat on the edge of this and the edge of that, and then I've got my DTI stand which I can slide that way. If I zero it at this point, which seems to be the lowest, I've got 0, 1, 1, 1. Need to check that again. I think that's 1 1/4, somewhere between 1 1/2 and 2, 2, 2, 1. So there's a bit more wear in this midsection. And then if I take it across and do the same on this side, I've got 1, 2, 2 1/4, 2, 2 1/2, 3, 3, 3, 2 1/4, 2. I need to check the far edges while turning the rig around. Between the wear part and the machine part. So for example there I've got 2 1/4 thou below that point. I've got 3 1/2 thou there, so there's what, whatever the difference is there, 3/4 of a thou wear. And so that point is, I need to get my head around this, 3 1/2 thou higher than that point. I think that's about the highest spot. I'm going to check it again because I think some of it's been pulled up by that clamp bolt for the gib, and I want to check that again because its initial reading is a 4, but I want to just check it over again. It's not an ideal setup. I'm only reading in thou, but it's I'll just go over and repeat the measuring exercise over and over again until I get a sort of an average reading. I had to stone this face, well, both the machine faces off because there's a umpteen raised sections. Almost had a cold chisel on that bit. Same here. Just took off all the high spots that I could feel. Same as this one. You can see where the stones polished it up. Yeah, I'd prefer to have a bigger footprint over on that section and the same on that to give me a better average of the areas, but I'm right at the limit of what my stone will give. Whilst the DTI will span it, I can't then index the DTI left and right, so what I've got's as good as I'm going to get. There we go. So on the face of it, around about 3 thou wear. So here it is, nice bit of viewer mail. I wished. 24 inch, I think it's a Wembley, or what did I read the name? Upside down there, so not much use to you. Windley Brothers, Chelmsford, so that's Essex, UK. I don't know what vintage that would be. It's got a hand scraped finish. And when it arrived yesterday, it was pretty warm, the casting, so I couldn't get a print off it, so I've left it. It's overnight. I'm assuming now it's about the same temperature throughout. Yeah, it's 24 inches long, plate's 600, so it overlaps 1/4 inch, so I'm doing the diagonals. It would have been handy if it was 26 inches long, but I can't find one that long. The next one up's 36 inch and twice the price, and I think this will do it. Also, I've got no room for dialysis equipment, so kidney sales were off. It's set up so that it's got 3 points of contact underneath. Two on one foot and one on the other, which I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, I assume that's so that when it's in storage all the way up, it's its natural, that's its resting point. But I could be completely wrong with that. I'm assuming that that surface is for putting spirit level on of some form. Anyway, I'm having the devil's own trying to get a decent print off it. Just because the scraping is so shallow, I've got virtually no ink on the table, and it's a case of I'm not entirely sure how you're supposed to hold these things to get a consistent print, because obviously if I just hold one end and move it backwards and forwards, what I seem to be getting is a heavier print at the end I'm holding. So I swap it around and do the other end, and same thing happens. If I hold the 2 feet, let's call them, and move it, the whole thing just suctions down to the table. So yeah, I'm pretty confident it's flat, probably better than my table, but we shall see. I'll try and get a print and then just show you an image of it. There's a general idea of how it's printing. You can see it's not picked up much here, so what I'm going to do is reverse the thing, clean it off, reverse it, and then see if I get the same area blank. Looking at the contact area, you can see the scuffs where it's picked up ink, and then you can see the area next to it where it's not. Now that, as I say, I'm not 100% that it's not picking up the variation in the table surface. It could be. Don't know. Could just be my technique. So let's reverse the turn it end to end and do the same, clean it off and do the same print. So that's second print. Clean the surface, reversed it. It's still lighter on that area. I spent a bit more time scuffing it backwards and forwards just to make sure I got a good ink contact. So quite clearly there's definitely a lighter section along there. So what I'm going to try and do, because I don't need the full width of that to pick up on my slide, I'm just going to use this near face, this side. So I'll mark the top of it that it's that face it's got to go on, because I don't fancy trying to scrape that any better than it is. Anyway, ink it up and get going. So I've just done a quick rough patch, basically the length of that bearing. You can't print on a ground smooth surface, and from what I found that applies to a worn smooth surface, so you have to put a scrape over it. So I've gone one sequence that way and another sequence that way, and then put the straight edge on it, and what it's showing is the bits that I've missed down the edge. So without boring you to tears, I'll bring you back when we're getting a bit more of a print. Right, we're on the 11th cycle. Let me see. That's better angle. If you can, for those of you that watched the earlier episode, the middle section was showing 0, or the low point on the measuring the width, and these areas were from memory a couple of thou up, which is basically what it's showing on the print. So it's less wear in there and more wear in there, which is handy because that's basically what I found on the mating surfaces. So yeah, 11 in, a couple of hundred to go. So we're on 15 cycles and we're starting to get an extension of the print area. We've still got a blank spot here which is low, which is middle third. It's coming in a bit better now. I'm giving another heavy scrape in the 2 outside areas and then go and have my cup of tea. Right, we're on the 25th cycle. I've just cleaned the straight edge off and the surface, cleaned it all back down with white spirit, re-inked it, put a bit too much ink on the parallel, which you can tell. But we're getting quite a reasonable spread now. Just wants to be refined. So it's lunchtime. I'm going to grab a bite to eat and then come back and start doing little short scrapes. Little hundreds of the little so-and-sos. But it's not looking too shabby. There we go. That's about 3 hours so far. Well, I thought I'd show where I'm at. More refining the surface rather than shifting material now. So this was the last print, and I've gone over it in one direction. So you can see the fresh scrapes, just cutting the blueprints down by half. So if I pan out a bit, so that's took them all in at that direction. So now I'm going to come back and try and pick off the rest of the blue with that direction, or say half of the blue that's left. So that's just gone back over it then in the opposite direction, and basically just trying to cut the blues in half. Again, trying not to overlap the scrapes. From an ergonomics point of view, it's a lot easier for me doing that way, because trying to set in here, the angle's not right, doesn't feel comfortable, and like most things which are handcrafts, if you like, the skill is in having something which is repeatable and ergonomically it's got to fit. So the scrapes going that direction are much more even, much more consistent. So it's a case of the final pass will probably be a pass running in that direction, just for the look of it. Anyway, I'll scrape it off and then you can see what it looks like without the burrs and without the ink. So, of course, once you scrape the burrs off, you clean the burrs off and scrape the ink off as well. The latest batch of scrapes blend in with everything that's underneath. And it becomes increasingly difficult to see each subsequent set of scrape marks, which is why you end up with this surface which is made up of lots of different depths of surface, albeit very small differences in them. Anyway, enough waffling on. I'll get getting it inked and see how we look now. There's a bit of a bare patch down here. There's a fairly even spread down it now. So I'm going to start picking off the blue areas now with single strokes, keeping them short and keep the direction uniform. Well, we've done 45 cycles, pulled in the end piece. That's where the parallel stopped from the other end. So I basically pulled in the left side and then started printing this, but only scraping this end from that line forward. So I've got a reasonable spread of prints now. Sticking on my little template, we're getting around about 20 to 25 on most spots. Slight dilemma as to how you count points versus contact bearing points versus blue splodges. Because if I put less ink on, it only picks up the higher points, so you get more points per square inch. If you put more ink on, it spreads and joins, so you get less points per square inch. So I've sort of gone for a medium coverage. Anyway, I would say that that's at least a 50% bearing surface. and they're quite reasonably well broken up. So I'm going to call that face done now, and next job, I'm going to leave it all printed as it is. Next job's flip it over, have a look at the other side, but I want to measure it then, and then I've got to map the other side to bring it in parallel before I worry too much about the surface contact. I'll explain that in the next part.